Hello everyone. Now today we are talking about one additional note which can totally change the feel and the sound of your pentatonic licks and add a little bit of spice into your improvisations. A little bit of that Carlos Santana style spice. Now what you heard in that introduction was me playing two solos that appear in the same song. The first one was, so that song is Black Magic Woman, originally kind of written by Fleetwood Mac and performed by Fleetwood Mac, and then covered very famously by Carlos Santana. I started there with the Fleetwood Mac version, which has a kind of much stronger blues rock feel, and then I switched to the Carlos Santana style lead part. It was over the same backing track, but hopefully you could hear that it had a very, very different feel. Now, the actual Carlos Santana version has an even more different feel than what you just heard there, because he's playing with different instrumentation. There's a kind of more of a samba-y Latin vibe in the kind of band that is supporting him. But nevertheless, this one note, which is a big Carlos Santana thing, and loads of other guys use it, so we'll talk about that a little later on in the lesson, has the potential to completely transform your licks and really give you more options, more flavors to play with, and it's just a wonderful little kind of tool to add into your toolkit. So let's dive into it and examine what is going on here. Oh, just one little opening caveat before I show you what's going on here. I'm not saying that the Carlos Santana version is better than the Peter Green version. Peter Green is one of my all-time favorite blues guitarists. I absolutely adore all the music he created with Fleetwood Mac. So before you guys jump into the comments, we're not talking about a better or worse here. We're just talking about different flavors. We're just talking about kind of different options. And I think options is always a cool thing, or always a cool thing to have as a guitarist. So let's deconstruct what's going on here. Now, the Peter Green version is kind of total minor pentatonic. So we're in the key of D minor, and he's playing that opening solo pretty much out, or he's playing that solo pretty much out of the first and second shapes of the D minor pentatonic scale, with most of it focused in that D minor pentatonic, which looks like this. So D minor pentatonic, shape number one, very comfortable for most of us, a real kind of starting point for many of our blues guitar solos. Now, the new note that we're adding in actually appears in three different places. It appears in the key of D minor, on the 12th fret of the low E string, on the 9th fret of the G string, and on the 12th fret of the high E string. So if we play that scale with this new additional note, we've now got this. Now, for the theory-minded amongst you, what's going on here is we're playing the major second interval. We're adding in the major second, which when you shift that up an octave, becomes the 9th, okay? Now, this major second appears in a whole range of different scales, but in the way that we're kind of talking about it here, you could view it as one of the additional notes from the Aeolian mode. So we're almost playing the full Aeolian mode, but not quite, because we're not playing the flat 6th interval from that scale. The Aeolian mode, the natural minor. So we're kind of taking a very focused, almost kind of like a little bit of a hacky approach, if you like. But there's a couple of reasons for doing so. Number one, if you're not really theory-minded and you don't want to go through the process of learning the modes and getting to grips with that, or you're a little bit earlier in your blues guitar journey, then just focusing on this one note is going to be really cool and fun and just re-energize your playing and sound great. And the second reason is, even if you know how to play the Aeolian mode and you're kind of fairly comfortable with it, the second, for me, is a bit more of a safe note. It's a bit safer than the flat 6th, and it can be used in a variety of different cool ways, which we'll dive into in a moment. So if you're struggling to incorporate or to incorporate the Aeolian flavor in your playing, then focusing just on the second rather than the whole scale shape, I think, is a really, really nice way to get started. Now, all of the examples that I'm going to play through here are really just in this first shape, but You could extend this all over the fretboard. You're going to find the major second interval in every shape of the minor pentatonic scale, and it's going to sit 2 frets above the tonic note. So wherever you find the tonic note, it's going to be 2 frets up from there, or wherever you find the flat third, it's going to be 1 fret down from that. And the scale diagrams and kind of a little bit more explanation around this is going to be found in the full lesson for this, which is in the Blues Club, and the link for that is below. So now that we've got that theory out of the way, let's look at 4 different ways that we can use this note to add some different flavors and some different textures into your blues guitar solos. The first and the spiciest way that you can use this major second note, this additional note, is to resolve to it. So this is going to give you the kind of strongest shift away from the classic blues rock sound and really put you in that Carlos Santana territory. But if you're not a big Carlos Santana fan, then the other kind of 3 ways are more applicable within a more sort of classic blues rock context. But this first one absolutely is going to get you into that Carlos Santana vibe. So let's have a look at it. It is resolving your phrases on this second. So you're going to see that, or you would have seen that in that opening solo. So rather than sort of taking a classic blues phrase like this, we're going to do something like this instead. Literally 1 note different in those 2 phrases, but that 1 note totally changes the vibe from classic blues rock to hey, a little bit of a Latin thing going on there. And that is one of the huge differences between what Peter Green does in his solo over Black Magic Woman and what Carlos Santana does in his. Now, you can resolve in this kind of first shape on that 9th fret on the G string. You could also resolve on the 12th fret on the E string. That to me has a slightly tenser quality, even though it's the same note. Just because it's in that higher register, it feels a little bit more like it wants to move somewhere else. Whereas I think you can kind of sit on that 9th fret on the G string kind of pretty comfortably. So the choice there is yours. You can also target that 12th fret on the low E string, but honestly that's going to sound a little woody, not really that cool. I wouldn't have thought. So step number 1, if you want to really add some spice, ramp up the spice-o-meter in your blues guitar playing, it's instead of resolving down to the tonic or any of the other notes that you typically go for, focus on that major second. It's going to totally change the vibe of what you're doing and sound awesome. The second way that we can use this major second note to kind of add more flavor and texture into the playing is simply to use it as a transition note within a broader phrase. Now, you can use this depending on how often you hit the note, depending on how you kind of use it. You can create a really quite spicy, totally different vibe, or it can just add a little bit of flavor into what you're doing. And I'll show you a couple of examples of this. Now here, there are so many options of how you could do this, right? I'm just talking about adding that note into a broader phrase. But the way I would recommend getting started is take kind of a classic minor pentatonic lick that you feel really comfortable with. Let's go for something like this. And then just try and add that note in. Literally just 1 note. So there, just adding that note in on that kind of, that second on the 12th fret on the E string, very fleetingly, didn't really change the vibe too much at all. But if I was to go something like this, suddenly the spice kind of starts to come back in there a little bit. It moves you further away from that classic blues rock sound. So here you have some very, very cool options. And you can decide how far you want to, kind of move away from your classic pentatonic stuff into that slightly different flavor. A couple of ways I personally like to kind of incorporate it when I'm trying to think about this sound would be, the first one is exactly what Carlos Santana does. So he does this very, very cool thing where he slides in from the 9th to the 10th fret on the G string. And then he just kind of does that classic sort of bluesy thing, 10th fret on the B string, 10th fret on the E string. And then again, classic blues phrasing. But just by going, it really changes the feel. And as with any kind of these flavorful notes that we encounter on the guitar, the more you target them and the more you place them at the center of your phrases, the stronger they're going to come through. So if I kind of hit that note a couple of extra times, something like this, then I'm moving further and further away from that minor pentatonic sound. So the key thing here is the note is there. You choose how much you want to go for it, and you decide, what role is it going to play within any given lick? Is it going to be the star of the show? Are you going to resolve to it? Or are you just going to kind of touch on it briefly before playing something else? The other really, really cool way that I like to kind of use this note as a transition note before I cover some more of the detailed ways that I like to use it would be this kind of idea where you take your middle finger and you put it on the 10th fret of the G string. And remember, guys, these are all movable ideas. So you just shift this into a different key and it's going to work just the same fingerings, just different parts of the fretboard. But in the key of D minor, middle finger on that 10th fret of the G, first finger on that 9th fret of the G, and then with your little finger, you're going to hit the tonic note there. So you can kind of do these repeated pull-offs. And you can create this kind of pretty rocky, almost like heavy metalish sound a little bit by kind of hammering on, pulling off, hitting that tonic, and then with the middle finger, if you want, hitting the flat 7 behind the tonic, and then sort of repeating the idea. And you can get a little bit faster there if you like. That's a big, big Rory Gallagher thing, and I'm a huge Rory Gallagher fan, so that's quite a cool way of, again, using this as a transition note. So that's the second way that you can incorporate this note into your playing. Now, this is the sort of most open of the points I cover here. The other points are a little bit more specific, so take your time with this one. Target it in different ways, use different techniques, hammer-ons, slides, place it in different positions on the lick, in your licks, and just use your ear to guide you. Just kind of figure out, what's working, what's sounding good, and double down on that, and just kind of dig deeper. Experiment, try different things out, and you're going to create some very, very cool sounding licks, I promise. The third way that I love to use this note is to bend up to the flat third. So, as I mentioned before, you're going to find this interval 2 frets above the root in any given position and 1 fret below the flat third. So, if we're kind of in this position on the 9th fret, you've got the second interval here, or the 9th, and then the flat third is here. And the same thing is going on an octave higher. So you've got the second here, and then the flat third here. Now, the flat third is a classic note from the minor pentatonic scale. That's where you're going to be doing a lot of your bends. And creating a lot of those very kind of, beautiful classic blues lines. But now, when you've got that second right next to it, you can bend a semitone, a half step, from the second into the flat third, and you kind of get the best of both worlds situation, because you're going to hear that new interval, that new flavor, and then you're going to bend up into a very familiar flavor from the minor pentatonic scale, a little bit like this. Or It's always right there. And if you incorporate that into your licks, man, it just gives you some more options, more bending options, and again, just different flavors that you can't incorporate or create with a minor pentatonic scale. It's a lot kind of closer to the standard blues idea. You can really target this idea a lot and still create a very, very bluesy feel in your playing. A little bit like this. So still very much within that kind of blues world, but there's some additional flavors coming in, which is really, really nice. Now, bending is the way that I like to kind of, execute that idea because I think it sounds the smoothest. But you can also manipulate that idea or kind of, dig into that concept and that connection through slides, hammer-ons. And actually, that's pretty much it, really, because the way that we're exploring this is going from kind of the second to the flat third, not the other way around. But again, just look at that connection, explore, experiment, and you're going to create some very, very cool ideas. And last but not least, our fourth way of targeting this note. Now, this is very kind of bluesy. This is a big John Mayer thing. He does this all the time in his playing. Dave Gilmour also kind of does it in his playing sometimes. So it's really melodic, sounds awesome, very beautiful flavor. We are going to bend from the root note, the tonic note, up to the second. Okay. Now, if you've kind of seen some of my courses and lessons in the past, you know that I often don't recommend bending on the tonic because the tonic has a very strong sense of resolution. And often if you kind of start to try and manipulate that note, you're kind of disrupting the musical home base and it gets a little bit too tense often. But this specific idea works beautifully. Now here we are going to have to step out of that first shape a little bit just to kind of manage this bend in a cool way. So what we're going to do is if we go to our B string, we've got the flat 7 here. So that kind of 13th fret on the B string, which means we're going to find our root, our tonic, here at the 15th fret on that B string. So what we're going to do is we're going to target that 15th fret, the tonic note, and we're going to push it up. And you have to be quite assertive here. You can't really hang around and spend a lot of time on the bend. You have to hit the note, bend up to the second, and get out of there quite quickly. Otherwise, it's going to sound weird. But if you hit that note, it can sound absolutely beautiful. This is a big John Mayer thing, and he does it in the song Slow Dancing in the Burning Room, one of his most famous tracks, where he's doing this in the key of C sharp minor, but one fret up. The exact same thing would be this. And then off he goes and does the rest of it. But he's kind of playing in that first shape of the minor pentatonic scale, going up then to the root or the tonic, and then bending up to that second. And it sounds absolutely awesome and very, very bluesy. We're not really kind of bringing any spice here, just bringing some beautiful melody into the playing. David Gilmour does a kind of similar thing in his playing, and often he'll kind of double down. So he'll do a double bend, so it's like a two-tone bend, moving 4 frets, where he'll move from the flat 7 up to the tonic, and then up to the second from there. So like a great example of that would be Another Brick in the Wall Part 2, which is actually in the key of D minor, where he goes... Now, some sick person as a joke in this studio decided to put 11s on this guitar. So that was actually kind of quite spicy on the fingers. And depending on how you've got your guitar set up as well, those two-tone bends are going to be potentially quite challenging if you've never tried them before. But they sound very, very cool, different flavor. And so you actually got 2 options there. You can bend from the tonic up to the major second, or all the way from the flat 7 up to the tonic, back down again, and then all the way up to the major second. It sounds awesome. Again, just other options for you to kind of think about and play around with. So, guys, there we have it. One note that has the potential to really add a lot of depth to your playing, a lot of texture to your playing. And as you can see, you've got this kind of spectrum of spice, if you like, where you can go from something very bluesy sounding with just a little extra flavor in there, all the way through to something much more Carlos Santana, Latin, very, very different feel. And that is what I want you to explore after this lesson. So go away, dig into this, dig into each of those ideas, take them at one at a time, small little chunks. Each of these ideas, there is so much depth to explore. One note can do so much. So don't just kind of do that classic thing of, oh, cool, yeah, nice one, 10 minutes, and you move on with the rest of your life. Put this into your practice routine. Try it out. Try those different things out. Use your ear to guide you. See how it sounds. Test different ideas out and really dig into this in depth. You can use this idea whenever you're playing the minor pentatonic scale in a minor kind of blues setting, so over a minor chord progression, and it's just going to give you so many more options to play around, to target, and just start to open up the fretboard a little bit for you. So, guys, good luck. Any questions, comments, thoughts? Drop them in the comments below. I love to read them. I love to see them. Good luck with it, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers.